Our quiet suburban life shattered when the monster next door picked a fight. But his petty hatred was only the fuse. It ignited a global conspiracy that stole our home, our identity, and plunged my wife into the heart of a terrifying secret. The suburbs have a way of hiding their monsters in plain sight. They live behind manicured lawns and freshly painted fences, and their venom is often mistaken for civic duty. Our monster was Officer David Miller. He lived 2 houses down, and his patrol car, parked like a steel shark in his driveway, was a constant looming reminder of the power he wielded, both on and off duty. When my wife Simone and I first moved in, he seemed fine, if a bit intense. He was the kind of guy who'd measure your grass with a ruler if he thought it was a quarter inch too high. But his intensity curdled into something ugly the moment he focused on Simone. Simone is a force of nature. She's a brilliant cardiologist with a laugh that can make flowers bloom and a spirit that refuses to be dimmed. She is also a black woman, and for Officer Miller, that seemed to be a personal offense. His microaggression started small, a sneer about the loud music she played while gardening, which was usually just some classic Motown at a respectable volume. A passive-aggressive comment in a neighborhood email about maintaining property values after she planted a vibrant, beautiful garden of wildflowers instead of the sterile boxwoods everyone else had. He never said the quiet part out loud, but we heard it. Every time his gaze lingered on her, cold and appraising, we heard it. Her joy was his kryptonite. The breaking point came on a perfect Saturday afternoon. The sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue, and the air smelled of fresh-cut grass and charcoal. Simone had decided to host a small cookout for her family. Her sister, 2 cousins, their kids, maybe 15 people in total. Laughter echoed from our backyard. The sizzle of burgers on the grill was a perfect soundtrack, and for a few hours, the shadow of Officer Miller's house seemed to recede. We were just a family, enjoying a beautiful day. Of course, it couldn't last. He didn't knock. The gate to our backyard screeched open, and there he stood, Miller, in his civilian clothes, a tight polo shirt and cargo shorts, but with the posture of a man wearing full body armor. His face was a thundercloud. The laughter in the yard died instantly. Even the kids stopped their game of tag, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. "This is a residential neighborhood," he said, his voice cutting through the silence. He wasn't speaking to me. His eyes were locked on Simone. "Some of us are trying to have a peaceful afternoon." Simone, ever graceful, wiped her hands on her apron and stepped forward. "David, hello. We're just having a small family get-together. The music isn't loud, and it's the middle of the afternoon." "I'll be the judge of what's loud," he spat. His eyes scanned the faces of her family members, his lip curling in disgust. "You have an unapproved number of guests here. This constitutes a public disturbance." My blood started to boil. I stepped up beside Simone, putting a hand on her arm. "It's a private party on our own property, Miller. You have no jurisdiction here." He finally looked at me, a flicker of something even uglier than his usual contempt in his eyes. It was pity. Pity that I had, in his mind, chosen the wrong side. "Stay out of this, Mark. I'm dealing with her." He took a step closer to Simone, invading her personal space. He was a good 6 inches taller than her, and he used every inch to try and intimidate her. "You people think you can just come in here and do whatever you want. This neighborhood has standards." "You people?" Simone's voice was dangerously quiet. All the warmth had vanished from it, replaced by chilled steel. "Please, David, finish that sentence. I'd love to hear what you have to say." That was it. The challenge, the refusal to shrink. It broke whatever flimsy leash of control he had. His face went from angry to beet red. "I said, this is a disturbance," he roared, and then he did it. He shoved her.
It wasn't a gentle push, it was a hard, two-handed shove to her chest that sent her stumbling back. She would have fallen if I hadn't been there to catch her. Something inside me snapped. The world went red at the edges. I moved forward, but Simone's cousin, a big guy named Marcus, put a hand on my chest, holding me back, while her sister rushed to her side. "Don't, man," Marcus said in a low, urgent voice. "He wants you to. That's his whole game." Miller saw my rage, and a sick, triumphant smirk spread across his face. He had gotten the reaction he wanted. He reached into his pocket. I thought he was going for a phone, but he pulled out a pair of gleaming steel handcuffs. "That's it," he snarled, his eyes on me now. "You're interfering with an officer. You're under arrest." He took a step toward me, jangling the cuffs. "You're not on duty, Miller. You're in your flip-flops," I yelled, my voice shaking with fury. "Assaulting an officer is a 24/7 crime," he said, his smile widening. "And I saw you threatening me. I felt my life was in danger." He looked past me, at Simone, who was now standing again, her eyes blazing with a fire I'd never seen before. "And your wife here, she assaulted me first. I'm going to have so much fun writing this report. You're both done." He held up the cuffs, the absolute king of his tiny, hateful castle. He had all the power, and we had none. He was the law, and in his twisted world, we were the criminals. He took another, deliberate, menacing step toward us, ready to ruin our lives, and there wasn't a single thing we could do to stop him.
He lunged. The metallic click of the handcuffs ratcheting open was deafening in the sudden quiet of our backyard. I braced myself, my body tense to meet the impact, to fight back, consequences be damned. Marcus's grip tightened on my shirt, a human anchor in a sea of red-hot fury. Simone stood her ground, her chin high, a queen surveying a pathetic, crumbling court jester. Miller's face was a mask of pure, ugly triumph. This was his moment. This was the pinnacle of his pathetic existence, putting us, the outsiders, in our place. He was 2 feet away, 1 foot. His hand holding the cuffs was reaching for my wrist. That's when we heard it. It wasn't a siren. Sirens are loud. They announce their arrival. This was the opposite. It was a subtle, coordinated sound. The whisper of high-performance tires on asphalt, the low hum of powerful engines cutting out in perfect unison. It was the sound of apex predators arriving for a hunt. 3 black, unmarked SUVs had materialized on our quiet suburban street. They were parked with geometric precision, one blocking Miller's driveway, the other 2 flanking it, effectively sealing the entire front of his property. Doors opened in a single fluid motion. 6 men emerged, 2 from each vehicle. They weren't in uniform. They wore dark, functional civilian clothes, but the tactical vests, the holstered sidearms, the earpieces, and the sheer, unadulterated professionalism screamed federal agent. They moved with a chilling lack of haste, their eyes scanning everything, missing nothing. Miller froze mid-lunge. His arm, outstretched to cuff me, hung in the air like a broken branch. The triumphant smirk on his face didn't just fade, it was wiped clean, replaced by a slack-jawed, fish-like gape. His head swiveled toward the street, and every drop of color drained from his face, leaving it a pasty, sickly gray. The hand holding the handcuffs started to tremble, the metal clinking faintly. This wasn't confusion. This was a deeper, more primal emotion. It was the dawning, soul-crushing terror of a bully who has just realized he picked a fight with the wrong person's protector. He recognized the authority radiating from these men, and he knew, in his bones, that it dwarfed his own into absolute insignificance. One man, taller than the rest and wearing a sharply tailored suit instead of tactical gear, detached himself from the group.
He walked with a calm, purposeful stride, his expensive shoes making no sound on the pavement. He didn't even glance at Miller. He walked right past him as if he were a garden gnome and came to a stop a respectable few feet in front of Simone. The entire backyard, our family, the kids, even the birds in the trees seemed to be holding their breath. "Dr. Simone Williams?" the man in the suit asked. His voice was calm, level, and utterly devoid of the thuggish bravado Miller used as a crutch. Simone, though clearly stunned, straightened her shoulders. "Yes," she answered, her voice steady. "My name is Agent Harris, FBI," he said, giving a slight nod. "We apologize for the intrusion." He finally turned, and his gaze fell upon David Miller. It was like watching a scientist observe a particularly uninteresting insect. The contempt was there, but it was cold, clinical, and 1,000 times more terrifying than Miller's hot-headed rage. "David Michael Miller, badge number 734, Agent Harris stated. It wasn't a question. Your service weapon. 2 of the other agents were already moving, flanking Miller before he could even process the command. Miller sputtered, his brain finally catching up. "What? What is this? I'm a police officer. I'm in the middle of making a lawful arrest. These people—" "You are in the middle of committing a federal crime," Harris cut him off, his voice dropping a degree colder. "Your weapon, now." One of the agents efficiently disarmed a still protesting Miller, while the other one plucked the handcuffs from his limp fingers. With a snap that echoed with beautiful poetic justice, they cuffed his hands behind his back using his own restraints. Miller's pathetic reign was over. A wave of relief so profound it almost buckled my knees washed over me. But the relief was short-lived. This wasn't about a neighborhood dispute. It wasn't about racism, not entirely. It was something else. Something much bigger. Agent Harris turned his attention back to my wife, his expression now laced with an urgency that sent a fresh chill down my spine. "Doctor," he said, his voice low and serious, "this isn't just about him. He was a symptom, not the disease. We have a time-sensitive situation, and we need your cooperation." I looked at Simone. Her face was pale, a storm of confusion and dawning apprehension in her eyes. "Cooperation? About what?" she asked. Agent Harris took a half-step closer, lowering his voice even further, meant only for us to hear. "It's about your research at the Institute. Specifically, your work on protein folding in neural pathways." My blood went cold. That was her classified project, the one she could barely even talk to me about. How did they know? And what did it have to do with a piece of trash cop like Miller? "We have credible intelligence," Harris continued, his eyes locked on Simone's, "that a hostile foreign entity has been attempting to acquire your data. We believe Officer Miller was activated to create a public, messy incident, to get you arrested, to discredit you, to get you out of the way. We need to move you to a secure location, now." My mind was reeling. A hostile foreign entity, activated. It sounded like something out of a spy movie, not something happening in our suburban backyard next to a half-cooked plate of burgers. Simone stared at Agent Harris, her medical mind processing the implications faster than mine could. Her mouth opened, then closed. A flicker of sheer terror, a terror that had nothing to do with the man now being shoved into the back of an SUV, crossed her face. "Oh God," she whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. Her eyes met mine, wide with a horror I didn't understand. The anomaly, the data from Patient Zero. The words Patient Zero hung in the air, thick and heavy with unspoken meaning. They dropped a lead weight into the pit of my stomach. Agent Harris's expression didn't change, but a subtle tightening around his eyes told me he knew exactly what she was talking about. This was it. This was the nexus of the whole insane situation. Simone's top-secret research, our racist neighbor, and a threat so severe it warranted a team of FBI agents descending on our quiet street. The backyard cookout felt like a scene from a lifetime ago. "We need to go, Doctor," Harris insisted, his voice gentle but firm, pulling her back from whatever abyss her mind had just peered into. He gestured towards one of the waiting SUVs. "We have a secure debriefing location ready. Your family will be protected here until we can arrange for their relocation."
Relocation. The word hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just a one-night stay in a safe house. This was our lives, upended, erased. Simone looked at her sister, her cousins, the kids who had stopped playing and were now huddled near their parents, their eyes wide with fear and confusion. She looked at our home, the garden she'd poured her heart into, the grill still smoking faintly. This was the life we had built, and it was being dismantled before our very eyes. "Just give me a minute," she pleaded, her voice trembling slightly. Harris gave a curt nod, a silent acknowledgement that even in a national security crisis, a woman deserved a moment to say goodbye to her world. Simone hugged her sister tightly, whispering reassurances I couldn't hear. She knelt and spoke to her niece and nephew, her voice soft and soothing, trying to paint a picture of an adventure instead of the terrifying reality. Marcus, her big cousin, just looked at me, his expression a mixture of anger and bewilderment. "Keep her safe, man," he mouthed, and I just nodded, feeling utterly powerless. As Simone and I walked toward the SUV, flanked by two agents who moved like shadows, I leaned in close. "What is it, Sim? What's patient zero?" She shook her head, her eyes darting around as if the trees themselves were listening. "I can't, not here." The fear in her voice was raw. This wasn't just about protecting classified data anymore. This was personal. This was something that terrified her. We were placed in the back of the lead SUV. The doors closed with a heavy, final-sounding thud, sealing us in a world of tinted windows and quiet efficiency. As the vehicle pulled away from the curb, I looked back at our house one last time. Agents were already swarming it, setting up a perimeter. Miller's house was also a hive of activity, agents going in and out with evidence bags. He had been a pawn, Harris said, a useful idiot, weaponized by people far more dangerous than he could ever dream of being. His petty racism had made him the perfect tool to be manipulated, a predictable little bigot who could be counted on to harass a black woman, all to serve a larger, more sinister agenda. The ride was silent for the first 10 minutes. The SUV moved smoothly through traffic, part of a 3-car convoy that flowed through the city like water, other cars seeming to part for us instinctively. I held Simone's hand, her fingers cold and trembling in mine. Finally, Agent Harris, sitting in the front passenger seat, turned to face us. "Dr. Williams," he began, his tone all business now. "We've been monitoring chatter for weeks, chatter centered on you. Your name kept popping up in connection to a specific data packet they were trying to exfiltrate from your institute. We didn't know what it was, only that they were willing to go to extreme lengths to get it." "Patient zero," Simone whispered, finding her voice. "The data packet is the complete genomic and proteomic workup of a single individual." Harris leaned forward, his interest clearly piqued. "And this individual is significant because—" Simone took a deep breath. "Because they should not exist. 5 years ago, a man was admitted to a private research hospital in Switzerland. He presented with symptoms no one had ever seen before. Rapid cellular regeneration on a scale that defies biology. An immune system that identified and annihilated any pathogen, any cancerous cell, any foreign body with 100% efficiency. He was, for all intents and purposes, biologically immortal." I stared at her, my mouth agape. Agent Harris's professional mask finally slipped, his eyes widening in disbelief. "Immortal?" "Effectively," Simone confirmed, "but it came at a cost. His neural pathways were degrading. The same process that made his body a fortress was slowly erasing his mind, his identity. He was trapped in a perfect prison of a body. The Swiss team contained him and studied him in secret for years, but they hit a wall. They couldn't understand the protein folding mechanism that triggered the process. So they sent the data to a handful of specialists around the world, under the highest levels of secrecy. I was one of them. The pieces started to click into place, each one more horrifying than the last. "And you solved it," I said, looking at her with a new sense of awe and terror. She nodded grimly. "2 weeks ago, I found the key. A unique protein cascade that could theoretically be stabilized. It could grant the physical benefits, the regeneration, the immunity, without the neurodegradation. It could be controlled, weaponized." A cold dread washed over me. An army of biologically immortal soldiers. It was the stuff of nightmares. "So this hostile entity wants your research to create super soldiers," Harris concluded, his voice grim. "They don't just want the research," Simone said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. She looked from Harris to me, her eyes filled with a terror so profound it made my fear feel insignificant. Patient Zero, he wasn't some random person. The Swiss team ran a deep background on him after they realized what he was. They had to know where he came from. "And," Harris pressed, leaning in even closer. Simone's final words landed like a death blow, rewriting the entire scope of the threat, turning a global crisis into something terrifyingly intimate. "He was an American," she said, her voice breaking. "He was a decorated Special Forces operator who went missing on a deep cover mission a decade ago. Before he disappeared, they took a sample of his DNA for the military's genetic database. The Swift team sent me that file along with the rest of the data. I ran a comparison against public genealogy records. I found a match. I found his family." She paused, taking a shuddering breath before delivering the final catastrophic revelation. "He has a son who is a perfect genetic match, a son who lives less than 30 miles from here." The cabin of the SUV, which had felt like a sanctuary, instantly became a pressure cooker. Agent Harris didn't even blink. He pressed his earpiece, his voice losing every trace of calm, replaced by the diamond-hard edge of command. "Pegasus, this is Harris. We have a code Omega. I repeat, code Omega. Asset Scion is compromised and in the wind. I'm transmitting target coordinates now." He rattled off a name and an address that Simone must have given him. "Full tactical response, priority 1. Scorch the earth if you have to, but get me the package." The driver, who had been a silent, stoic presence until now, stomped on the accelerator. The powerful engine roared to life, and we were thrown back into our seats as the SUV shot forward, weaving through traffic with impossible grace. The other 2 vehicles in our convoy mirrored the movement instantly, forming a flying wedge that carved a path through the streets. What had been a discreet transport was now a desperate, high-speed race against an unseen enemy. "I shouldn't have looked," Simone whispered, her face ashing with guilt. "I was just curious. I ran the DNA through a public database as an anonymous query. I never thought. Oh God, Mark, they must have been monitoring my network activity. They saw the search. They know." I gripped her hand tighter, my own heart hammering against my ribs. "You didn't know, Sim. You couldn't have. You found him. That's what matters now." Harris turned back to us, his face a grim mask. "She's right, Doctor. They know. Miller was Plan A. Discredit you, bury you in the legal system, and give them time to break into your lab. When we showed up, they initiated Plan B, grab the source directly." He pointed out the window as we screamed down a residential street, the scenery a blur of mailboxes and manicured lawns. "We're 5 minutes out. They're likely already there." The neighborhood we entered was a carbon copy of our own, the same quiet streets, the same illusion of peace. But this illusion was about to be shattered. As we rounded the final corner, the scene exploded into view.
A dark minivan was parked haphazardly in the driveway of a modest blue house. Its side door slid open. Two men were dragging a third man, young, maybe early 20s, struggling fiercely, out the front door. The son. They were seconds away from getting him into the van and disappearing forever. Our SUV didn't slow down. It rocketed forward and slammed directly into the side of the minivan with a deafening crunch of metal. The impact spun the van on its axis, pinning it against a large oak tree. Before the sound of the crash had even faded, the doors of all three of our SUVs flew open. It wasn't chaos, it was a symphony of violence. Harris's agents moved with a chilling, fluid precision. There was no shouting, only the sharp, contained reports of suppressed firearms. The two men trying to abduct the son were neutralized before they could even raise their own weapons. A third man who emerged from the driver's side of the crumpled van was taken down just as quickly. It was over in less than 10 seconds, a ballet of brutal efficiency. Agents swarmed the house, securing the scene, while two others gently guided the terrified, hyperventilating son into the back of the third SUV. He looked like a normal college kid, wearing a university sweatshirt and a look of sheer, uncomprehending terror. He was the key to changing the world, and he had no idea. As the adrenaline began to fade, Agent Harris finally let out a long, slow breath. He turned to us, the tension easing from his shoulders. "We got him. The cell is neutralized. It's over." He looked at Simone with a newfound respect. "Your curiosity, Doctor, may have just saved us from a very dark future." The weeks that followed were a blur of secure facilities and endless debriefings. Our old life was gone, our house, our jobs, our names, all wiped away. We learned the full story. Miller, consumed by his pathetic hatred and mounting debt, had been an easy target for recruitment. He was promised a payout that would solve all his problems, and all he had to do was what he was already doing, make life hell for his black neighbors. He was a disposable tool, and when the FBI finally brought the full weight of the federal government down on him, he crumbled completely. He gave up everything and everyone, a sniveling coward to the very end. He'll spend the rest of his life in a supermax prison, a monster caged not for his racism, but for the treason it enabled. It was a fittingly pathetic end. Today, our view isn't of a manicured suburban lawn. It's a sweeping panorama of the Rocky Mountains, seen through the triple-paned ballistic glass of a government research facility. Simone wasn't just put into witness protection, she was given a new purpose. She now leads a top-level biodefense team, her brilliant mind dedicated to creating countermeasures, vaccines, and fail-safes against the very technology she uncovered. She is turning a potential weapon of mass destruction into a shield for humanity. The son, whose name we will never know, is safe, living under a new identity, blissfully unaware that the fate of the world rests in his genetic code. Sometimes, late at night, I'll find Simone staring out the window, a pensive look on her face. "Do you miss it?" I asked her once. "The garden, the cookouts, the noise?" She turned and gave me a small, sad smile. "I miss the life we chose," she said, taking my hand. "But I wouldn't trade the life we have now. The monster down the street is gone, Mark, but we found bigger ones. And now," she squeezed her hand, her eyes filled with a fire that no bully could ever extinguish. "And now," she ran a home silch, "we're the ones who hunt them." And in her grip, I knew we were home. We had lost everything, but we had saved a world that would never know our names, and we had done it together.